You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama. This is Ghost Talk with 187 PI. Sit back and prepare yourselves for an adventure into the paranormal world with host Shelley Robertson and 187 PI research team. Ghost Talk is broadcasting live from Ohio's most haunted jail. Learn about their ongoing research at the jail and abroad, investigation techniques, and their personal encounters. Here is your host of Ghost Talk and 187 PI founder, Shelley Robertson.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Ghost Talk Radio. With me as your host, Shelley Robertson. And this is one fabulous Friday. Don't y'all agree? Tonight, I will be discussing hauntings from around the world. And I invite all of you, my listening friends out there, to join us in chat at wbhm-db.com, where you can get in on the conversation or ask me any questions you might have, or if you have a fantastic haunted story, you can share it with us. Now, as you all know, I am not only fascinated by haunting places and locations here in the United States, but I am also a fan of places all around the globe, and let me tell you, there are quite a few places on my bucket list that I do intend on visiting. So, let me tell you, our first place we're going to talk about tonight is the Castle of Good Hope, and it's in Cape Town, South Africa. Now, you know, we don't hear a lot about South Africa as far as hauntings, but you have to figure, like anywhere else, I'm sure there's plenty of haunted places. Now, the places I'm going to go over with tonight, they are some of the most haunted places in the whole world. Now, of course, they're not all of them, but some of the most haunted places in the whole world. Now, this Castle of Good Hope, it's known locally as the Cape Town Castle. Now, it was built in the 17th century, okay? So it's really doggone old. In 1936, the castle was declared a historical monument. And now it's a provincial heritage site. Now, following restorations in the 1980s, it is considered the best preserved example of a Dutch East India Company. Okay, it was built by the Dutch East India Company between I believe it was 1966, or no, not 1966, 1666 and 1679. Here I'm thinking about the 60s when I was born. It's a little bit older than me. Now, the castle, I'll tell you guys, is the oldest existing colonial building in all of South Africa, the very oldest. Now, this fortress, it housed a church, bakery, various workshops, living quarters, other shops, and even cells, yes, jail cells, among other facilities within this castle. Now, during the Second Boer War, which was in 1899, and that lasted till about 1902, part of this castle was used as a prison, and the former cells that was in this castle, they remain there to this day, and there are still inscriptions in some of the walls from some of the prisoners from that time period. So actually, I would be a little excited to read some of these inscriptions that these prisoners left behind, you know. The castle actually acted as a local headquarters for South African army in the Western Cape. All right. And today it houses the Castle Military Museum and ceremonial facilities for the traditional Cape regiments. The castle is also the home of the Cape Town Highlanders Regiment, which is a it's a infantry unit. Okay. Now, of course, a castle of this size and age, it has seen many tragedies and is no stranger to hauntings. Blood-curdling screams, strange voices, and footsteps still terrify soldiers on guard during the late night shifts at the castle, still to this day. The explanation, they are convinced of this. It lies in the bloody history of the castle and the restless spirits who were tortured there centuries ago. A lot of people were killed and tortured, starved. You can imagine. To this day, the soldiers who guard the castle would rather walk all the way around the outside of the building than pass through the haunted archways, especially in the wee early hours of the mornings. Now, apparitions have been reported, including this man who is seen walking all through the castle, and there is a dog that supposedly jumps on people when they walk by. And this happens once you go through those archways at the front of the castle. The most interesting story I found about the hauntings here is there's this lady who has been seen running through the complex, and she seems as though she's crying. And the funny thing of it was, her apparition finally disappeared, and no one's seen her when excavations uncovered a woman's body. Now, isn't that something? So evidently, at least for her, they put her at ease. Nonetheless, there's still apparitions of prisoners, soldiers, and of course, the man that they see all the time with the dog. This next place is Akershus Fortress or Castle, what they want to call it, and it's in Oslo, Norway. Now, it's considered one of the Nordic's scariest places, and we don't often hear too much about haunted places in Norway. Now, this castle, it was built in 1299. 1299. And it was protect Oslo. They built it to protect Oslo, and that's the capital of Norway. And it has also been used as a prison. Of course, you can imagine there was probably like dungeons and holding chambers and torture chambers, probably in nearly most castles, I would suspect. But nonetheless, this was also used as a prison. The chapel in this castle, it holds the crypts of King Hakon VII and King Olav V. And, of course, several other royals are also buried here, right? Now, which makes this really interesting and probably adds to the hauntings. The Nazis occupied the castle during World War II, carrying out many executions right there on the site. Now, today, the fortress, it covers like 67 buildings, and the space that it takes up, land-wise, is the size of 14 football fields. So that's pretty good, pretty good. And today, there's like 900 people employed here. So it's a big, big place. Among many reports of paranormal activity, of course, you can imagine, There's been lots of reports of phantom footsteps, apparitions of soldiers, and the castle's most well-known apparitions haunting its grounds is a robed woman and, of course, a demonic dog. Now, it's said, this is part of the legend, it's said that those who end up seeing either the dog or the robed woman, they will have a traumatic death a few months later. Now, I am not so sure I would want to try and debunk that case, folks. I don't know. What do y'all think? I think anything that results in death might be a little iffy. I don't think I want to test that one. Now we shall move on to the old Changi Hospital in Changi, Singapore. Yes, Singapore. You know, there's lots and lots of haunted places in the Asian countries, and they have so many rituals and stuff regarding their dead loved ones and friends and the spirits, and they're very respectful also. But this here isn't going to be what happened at this hospital, isn't so respectful. Now, this Changi hospital, it's considered the most haunted place in Singapore, okay? Right now, all the paint's peeling on the walls, and the architecture is starting to succumb to the weather. It's actually abandoned right now, and it looks much like a horror movie. And if you want to look it up online to get the pictures of it, you can. Now, this hospital, it was built in 1935 to serve the British Royal Air Force, during which time it was called the RAF Hospital. The British withdrew upon the outbreak of the war in the Pacific and the Japanese occupation of Singapore in 1942. Now, during this time, Japan used the hospital as a prison camp for British soldiers and their allies, as well as anyone considered to be anti-Japanese. Okay, so if you're anti-Japanese, you are going to be in the prison camp. The hospital was also thought to be a base for the Japanese secret police. Now, those are the people you really want to be afraid of. They held jurisdiction over the occupied territories and prisoners of war, okay? They had a reputation for ruthlessness, and many believe that prisoners held in the hospital grounds were often tortured to death. In fact, some stories claim that the Japanese secret police would impale the severed heads of executed prisoners on iron stakes outside of the public buildings during the occupation. I guess that's just to, show people what for, you know what I mean? After the war, the hospital returned to the British. For many, however, it'd never be the same. Most paranormal reports from the hospital tie its spectral presences to those horrific deeds committed during the war. Now, after Singapore claimed independence in 1965, the hospital was renamed Anzac Hospital, and it served members of the Commonwealth Armed Forces of Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, okay? Now, 10 years later, the hospital was turned over to the Singapore Armed Forces. Now, finally, in 1997, the site was closed out entirely, and that's when it slipped into abandonment. Now, over the years, the old Changi Hospital, it has acquired some substantial reputation for hauntings and unusual happenings. Visitors to the grounds report hearing disembodied screaming, and they also report seeing strange shadow people both day and night. It doesn't matter what time of day. Some claim to have seen the bloody apparitions of soldiers walking the halls. while others have reported the presence of a young boy who simply just sits there and stares, doesn't move, doesn't do anything. So I would tend to think that he was probably a not an intelligent being. He would be, the timestamp deal. Now, there was a movie that was even filmed here, and it was called Haunted Changi, right? The cast and crew reported a variety of odd occurrences, including sudden loud noises, ghostly voices, sightings of a woman with a black aura around her, and even people were even touched. The crew also supposedly captured one of the hospital's shadow people on film, and they actually kept this shot in the final movie. Numerous paranormal investigators and people who try to debunk legends, they have reported entering the old Changi hospital only to have, get this folks, you're not going to believe it as much as I didn't, only to have one of their members disappear, okay? That, I don't know. I think I would want to take my brother and go there, Toby, and we could go there and check it out, see if it works. What these missing individuals said when they returned is this. They each tell a similar story, okay? They said they have followed what appeared to be one of the members in their group, and they followed him away from the others, usually to a desolate part of the hospital. And when they turn a darkened corner, poof, they disappear into thin air, right? And then poof, a little while later, they just show back up, right? So I think I would like to test this with my brother and see if it works. Now we are going to travel on to Edinburgh, Scotland. Oh my gosh, there's so many haunted places in Scotland, and how do you choose, right? There's lots of castles and taverns, but this place I'm going to talk about it is called Mary King's Close, and this is a historic close, and it's located under buildings on the Royal Mile in the historic Old Town area of Edinburgh, right? In Scotland, of course. And it took its name from this gal named Mary King, and she was a merchant who resided on the close in the 17th century. Now, the close was partially demolished and also partially buried due to the building of the Royal Exchange in the 18th century, right? A little bit later, it was closed to the public for many, many years, and the area became shrouded in myths and urban legends, tales and hauntings, and murders abound, right? Okay. However, some new research and archaeological evidence had revealed that Mary King's Close actually consisted of a number of closes which were originally narrow streets with tenement houses on either side. And these houses, they stretched up to like 8 feet high. Mary King's Close is now operated as a visitor attraction, and guests can take guided tours and learn about Edinburgh's hidden history and have some paranormal activity with the ghosts there. Of course, as you can imagine, it has a reputation for hauntings too, dating back clear to the 17th century, with several paranormal investigations also taking place here. Apparently, many spirits of plague victims and past residents, they still remain in this area. Footsteps that seem to follow close behind people when they're walking along has often been heard and reported, as well as disembodied voices and various apparitions, including a little girl named Annie. So they were able to get her name. So now I think this would be a very interesting place to visit, that's under the buildings, right? Under the town. That would be really, really awesome to go check out. Now, we're going to travel on to the Forbidden City in Beijing, China, right? The Forbidden City it's a big palace complex in central Beijing, China, and it houses the Palace Museum, and it was the former Chinese imperial palace from the Ming Dynasty to the end of the Qing Dynasty. And the years that this was in operation like that was 1420 to 1912. So now this Forbidden City, that's what they call it. It served as the home of emperors and also for the emperor's household, as well as the ceremonial and political center of Chinese government. Okay, and this went on for like 500 years. Now, it was constructed in 1406 and it was finished in 1420. Now, the complex consists of 980 buildings and it covers over 180 acres. I will tell you, the palace exemplifies traditional Chinese architecture, and actually it's influenced cultural and architectural developments in East Asia and elsewhere. Now, the Forbidden City, it was declared a World Heritage Site in 1987, and it's listed by the UN as the largest collection of preserved ancient wooden structure in the world. Can you believe that? In the world. And with that, folks, we will be right back with more Ghost Talk. After this short break, you're listening to Ghost Talk Radio on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope.
That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Son of a...
Hey, son.
Mother...
Son? What are you doing?
Hey, Mom. I'm getting ready to listen to Periscope Uncensored.
By expanding your vocabulary.
Well, it is uncensored.
Son, the uncensored part of Periscope Uncensored is Jax and I getting down to brass tacks with all aspects of the paranormal. There's no fluff on our show.
So, no off-color commentary?
I didn't say that.
Awesome!
Son?
I just hit my head.
Oh boy. I'll go get you an ice pack. Catch Periscope Uncensored Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, only on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate Magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Back to Ghost Talk Radio. With me is your host, Shelly Robertson. If you just tuned in, I invite all of you to join me in chat at wbhm-db.com, where you can ask any questions you may have. If you missed the first part of the show, no worries, folks. You can listen to our show archive on Spreaker, Google Play, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. And I think there's a couple others too. So wherever you are, we're there too. Now, first, we were talking about the Forbidden City before the break. And right before the break, I had mentioned that it is the largest collection of preserved ancient wooden structures in the entire world. Now, I'm going to finish talking about this because, I mean, you could probably talk a whole, I don't know, hour and a half just on this fascinating large place, right? Now, since 1925, the Forbidden City had been under the charge of the Palace Museum, whose extensive collection of artwork and artifacts were built upon the imperial collections of the Ming dynasties, right? Part of the museum's former collection is now in the National Palace Museum in Taipei. Both museums descend from the same institution, but they were split after the Chinese Civil War. Now, since 2012, the Forbidden City has seen an average of 15 million visitors annually and received more than 16 million visitors in 2016 and 2017. So it's quite an attraction. And as you can imagine, it's the artwork and everything there is just, if you look at the pictures online, it's just fascinating. Now, one legend tells that the Forbidden City is cursed, okay? And it had been since the day it was officially opened by its builder, the Ming Emperor Yongle, in 1421. This evil emperor slaughtered over 2,800 people in his harem when he was trying to suppress an alleged sexual scandal on New Year's Eve when the official opening ceremonies were held, okay? Now, a few years after that horrendous incident, right, this fire raged through the Forbidden City, burning over 250 buildings to the ground and killing numerous people. Despite the place being covered with the Chinese Lucky Charms, you know, it didn't prevent the destruction. The Emperor Yongle, he sank into this deep depression, and he was thinking that this was a punishment for his actions, and then he died in 1424. Now, thousands of people have perished inside the walls of the Forbidden City, so you'd think that the place is overpopulated by spirits, right? Well, this place was home to Chinese royalty for centuries. The impressive, I mean, it really is impressive, imperial complex was also the site of a long string of murders over the years, from calculated assassins to crimes of even passion, all right? Many, many, many apparitions have been cited by tourists, staffs, and guards, and the claims, they range from seeing like former victims, soldiers, and people are even reported seeing the ghosts that look like royalty. So that is pretty amazing. And that is definitely, I think, would be a fascinating place to just I mean, even if you didn't get the chance to ghost hunt, to do an investigation, just a fascinating place to see. Next, we're going to travel on to the Musham Castle in Salzburg, Austria. Now, we hardly ever go to Austria, folks. The Moonsham Castle, it's a medieval castle near Unterberg in the Lungar region of Salzburg, Austria. Now, this spur castle is situated at a height of 3,540 feet. Come on, now that is a heck of a tall castle, right? Over 3,000 feet tall. Now, this castle was first documented on a deed that was dated 1191, right? And it was seized by the Prince Archbishops of Salzburg in about 1285. In 1520, it became an administrative seat of the Lungar region, and it was besieged during the German Peasants' War of 1524 to 25. So, Germans got a hold of it, like everything, I guess. Now, this Moonsham Castle is one of the most haunted castles of the world, and it's popularly known as the Witch's Castle. It served as the administrative center during the Zauberjackal witch trials, and those were between 1675 and 1690. Now, these trials, they led to the execution of 139 people, and most of the people that were executed, accused of being witches, were male. Is that surprising? Among those executed, right? 39 of them were children between the ages of 10 and 14 years old, and 53 of them were young adults between ages of 15 and 21. So they were killing off all the young males, basically. These people who were accused of being witches, they were tortured and burned. Some of them burned alive. Others were burned after being hanged or decapitated. And some of them were burned, like in a fire, after having their hands cut off. I don't know the purpose of cutting the hands off, but quite bizarre. Now, the Moonsham Castle in Austria has a history also with werewolves, folks. Believe it or not, the werewolves got to come from somewhere, right? In the 1800s, many deer and cattle, they were found dead around the castle, and suspected people were rounded up and taken to the castle along with some of the residents of the castle, and they were tortured and killed for being werewolves. All right. Now, this castle, it was a site of countless executions and those condemned of witchcraft throughout the Middle Ages. And as a result, many of these victims have come to haunt the castle in spirit form with apparitions. Here I'm getting my own self tongue-tied, right? Ranging people who've seen them, they say some of them look sad, some of them look angry, and some people who reported seeing apparitions here even say some of them are headless, so they don't have their heads. Many people report hearing voices and screams, as well as a particular spirit that tends to hound visitors in an attempt to make them leave. Now, the current owner of this castle even reports hauntings. And of course, the castle is privately owned, and it is open to the public 7 days a week. And you can even get an overnight stay there if you dare. I think it would be fascinating to check out. This next one, folks, we're going to travel to is the Chateau de Chateaubriand in France. The The Chateau de Chateaubriand is a medieval castle, and it is strongly built in the Renaissance period, the style. And it's located in the commune of Chateaubriand in the Loire Antique department of France. The castle is first mentioned between the years 10,030 and year 10,042, but actually it was founded much earlier than that, quite honestly at the beginning of the 11th century. Now, after the French Revolution, the chateau was sold and divided several times and was finally transformed into an administration center with the seat of the sous-prefecture, a court, and a police station, all within the confines, right? All these offices closed down after 1970, and nowadays the chateau is partly open to visitors. Now, dating back to the 11th century, this castle has experienced a rather turbulent past, right? Filled with war and murders. In the early 16th century, the wife of the castle's owner, she died there at the castle. And many from that period all the way up into today, they say she was murdered by her husband due to her affair with the King of France. It is said that every October 16th, the anniversary of her death, a blood stain appears in her room, and her ghost is often seen wandering the castle with a ghostly procession of guards and monks. So, I would definitely like to try to witness that, especially the group of guards and monks, the apparitions of them. But there's been lots of reports of it. Now, let's travel on to the Airedale Mental Hospital in Victoria, Australia. We're going to go down under now, folks. The Airedale Mental Hospital was obviously an Australian psychiatric hospital located in Ararat, and that's a rural city in southwest Victoria, Australia. Now, it was originally known as the Ararat Lunatic Asylum. Construction began in 1864, and the guardhouses are actually listed as being built in 1866. Now, through the list of patients, prior to the guard houses being built, they were housing patients 2 years prior to that. Now, it was closed as an insane asylum in 1998. In 2001, it became a campus of Melbourne Polytechnic. Now, this asylum was built as a town within a town with its own market gardens, orchards, vineyards, and even livestock were kept on the grounds. And at its height, it had over 500 staff, right? The original wings built in the 1860s to the modern forensic unit, which was built in 1991, total makeup of this dwelling was 63 buildings, right? And the forensic unit was put in just 2 years before the facility closed. Now, despite being closed as an insane asylum, the facility, it continued to house female prisoners during the building renovations right up until the current management took over in 2001. So you see here, once lived Australia's most terrifying and criminally crazy people right there in that castle, in that insane asylum. It actually looks like a castle. Throughout the years, the asylum was used for treating mentally unstable people, obviously, and approximately 13,000 people died in there. And just think about this, it remained in operation for 130 years, which when you break that down, that's about 100 deaths that took place a year. Now, at the present time, the asylum is used for ghost tours, reports of visitors suddenly passing out, feeling nauseous and pain while walking through specific rooms. There's other sections that people walk in that there's foul odors and they hear banging sounds on the walls, maybe as if maybe some mental patients are trying to break out of their rooms or something. Anyways, all of this is really common occurrences there. People have reported hauntings of nurses in white uniforms, moaning, crying, and hearing footsteps. In the asylum's J ward, there were 3 prisoners who were hanged when the asylum was a jail. Now, these 3 people, they were buried upright, and it is believed that their spirit still haunts the area of the jail. There has been paranormal investigations from researchers and such there, and those folks have shared their experiences of what's happened to them. Some say they've been shoved, other reports of being bitten, hearing screams, and all their electrical equipment that will have interferences or not work properly. There's the superintendent's office, and that's popular as well for being haunted. Now, it's said visitors have reported that when they have went to that area, they have encountered an unpleasant taste while walking past the office. People said that he died by committing suicide by swallowing hydrogen cyanide and another ghost that haunts the lunatic asylum with its presence is the apparition of Nurse Kelly. She wanders the women's ward and she looks at the ghost tour guides. So they get to see her quite often. Now, I'll tell you right quick here that lobotomies were performed in this asylum as well. And they were performed by slicing a hole in the skull and inserting ether in the brain to eliminate the fibers which were linked to the frontal lobe from the other sections of the brain, right? This method was used as a course to control mentally sick patients. So it shouldn't come as a shock that when all visitors enter this area of the asylum, some have claimed to have felt sharp headaches. So, as you can imagine, why this place is one of Australia's most haunted locations. And with that, folks, we'll be right back after this short break. You are listening to Ghost Talk Radio on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to Ghost Talk Radio. With me as your host, Shelley Robertson. If you just tuned in, I invite you all to join me in chat at WBHM-DB.com, where you can get in on the conversations and chat and ask any questions you might have. If you missed the first part of the show, no worries, friends. You can catch the archive on Spreaker, Google Play, iTunes, and iHeartRadio at your leisure. So, we're going to travel on to, we've been talking about all these, the most haunted locations in the world. We're going to travel on to the Rose Hall, and that's in Montego Bay, Jamaica. Now, this is the Caribbean's most haunted place. Rose Hall is a Jamaican Georgian-style mansion in Montego Bay, right? It's got a panoramic view of the coast, and it had fallen into ruins by the 1960s, but then it was restored, of course, and it currently hosts a tour and a museum that showcase Rose Hall's slave history and the legend of the White Witch of Rose Hall. Now, it's regarded as being visually impressive, and it's the most famous in all of Jamaica, okay? Locals to the area, they refer to the structure as the Great House. Now, this Rose Hall, it sits on 6,000 acres of land, and this plantation had a long history of legend and tales, mystery, intrigue, and, of course, spirits. The history of the structure is what makes it so popular today. In addition to this, many legends that surround the structure has attached stories to be told regarding the plantation. Several books have been written, and some of them even in Gothic tone, which have even brought more awareness to the hall. There's one book that mentions the plantation, and it has been widely successful, and this book is called The Witch of Rose Hall, of course. Now, this haunted house in Montego Bay, it was completed in the year 1780, and in the earliest days of the history of the home, the owners had approximately 2,000 slaves working in and around the immense building and the vast acreage of the property. Now, this fella named John Palmer, he was the individual that completed the mansion. Eventually, his grandnephew by the name of John Rose Palmer, he took over the establishment with his wife, Annie Palmer. And this is where the story gets interesting, right? Annie Palmer, she was said to be completely insane, and she was a murderer. Once her husband passed away, it is said that she inherited the structure, right? She remarried several times in her lifetime. However, legend states that she has murdered all of her husbands in that plantation house. Despite her obvious distorted and inappropriate mental state, her memory lingers on in several ways, right? In one area of this house, you will find a bar, and you will find many, many things that draw back to Annie. In that little town there's a local pub, and it's even named after Annie, called Annie's Pub, and they sell witch's brew in her memory, right? So it's like they're praising her efforts, but I will tell you, Annie was referred to as the White Witch of Rose Hall, and when she arrived at home, you know, at that house. She was an 18-year-old woman. And from the age of 10, when she was 10, she was raised by a nanny of Haitian descent that wanted to serve as her guardian once her parents passed away from typhoid fever. Annie was very close to her nanny, and she adored everything about her. Now, rumors emerged that the woman practiced in the occult, and she was said to have been a voodoo priestess. Now, it's believed that the nanny took a lot of time in educating Annie's in the ways of the voodoo world. By the time Annie became an adult, she was well versed in the ways of the occult, and she practiced it regularly. John Rose Palmer, Annie's husband, he loved her so much. However, he stumbled upon the fact that his wife was having an affair with one of the slaves that worked for Rose Hall. Once this occurred, as you can imagine, he was very, very angry, and he found a whip and he beat her with it. All right. Now, the beating was quickly announced among others that lived and worked at the plantation. That evening, a tragedy occurred that is said to have been a result of Annie. John Rose Palmer, he passed away. Several people believe that she may have poisoned his food or drink. Then there are some that also believe he died as a result of her voodoo spells or her circle of voodoo protection. Now, immediately after the death of her husband, Annie went after the slave that she was having the affair with. She had the man gagged and beat until he died. Not too long afterwards, she began having other affairs with several other slaves that worked on the plantation. It was noted that she often had the slaves killed, and especially the ones that she had intimate relations with. Now, when the people who worked for Annie discussed her, they referred to her as the Voodoo Woman. And in the year of 1831, Annie was discovered dead. It was determined that she'd been strangled. Now, while the servants worked to destroy all her belongings, it is believed that her spirit actually embedded to the home. Several hauntings and various types of unexplained activity have occurred throughout history, including reports of many apparitions, voices, and strange noises throughout the property. And that is even today, and that is quite amazing. Now let's come back to the United States, shall we? To our own backyard, and let's go to the Sally House in Atchison, Kansas. It's been called not only the most haunted house in Kansas, but quite possibly maybe in the entire country. Now, it was built in the mid 1800s in the growing community of Atchison, and the home has seen its fair share of owners through the years, including the family of a 6-year-old girl named Sally, who died in the home during a botched appendicitis surgery, okay? Now, the report states that a male doctor used to live in the home, and he used the front of the home for patients while his families lived upstairs. Now, one night, a mother and her daughter, who was Sally, they showed up urgently needing help for little Sally, and she was having extreme stomach pain that couldn't be stopped, right? So the doctor had to react quickly and do what he could to help. Now, while anesthesia, it was given to Sally, but the doctor had to act rather quickly, because he felt that it was urgent, to start the operation so he could save her life, right? Now, it was also stated she had appendicitis. Now, unfortunately, she passed away on the operating table, and as you can imagine, her last living memory was feeling the pain from that male doctor, right? Those who have visited the Sally house have reported a ton of different and strange happenings. Voices, cell phones having issues, footsteps going up and down stairs, you name it, it's been reported. But the real kicker that's been reported, this is the real kicker, folks. scratches mysteriously appear on the bodies of some of the men who visit the home. Maybe I should go for a visit with some male friends and let's see if that really works. I will tell you, while there are tons of actively haunted locations all over the world and here in the United States, unfortunately, I can only cover a few during our allotted showtime. All of the places that were featured in tonight's broadcast are real places that you can go and visit for yourselves. Please be sure to visit during open operating hours or get special permissions from the owners. And now I want to talk a little bit about what's going on here at 187 PI in the old Paulding County Jail. I want to mention that last Sunday we had Ghost Stories Night at the jail, and I just want to thank all of my team and everyone who came and supported the local dog kennel and the old Paulding Jail. We had a great turnout. It was such a pleasure swapping stories and getting to speak with a lot of people from the local community. Of course, we also have the escape games running this month, and this month's theme is Dr. Rubenstein's Human Experiments. I tell you what, guys, that theme is so much fun with zombies and all. For more information on our escape games and all the different themes we run at the jail, go to jailbreakcode9.com, and that's the number 9. Ticket sales from these games help to further the restoration project here at the jail. We also have a full schedule of events for the summer and fall happening here at the old Paulding Jail. We have many dates available for private paranormal investigations, as well as all the information that you will need to schedule a private investigation for you and your paranormal team. I will mention that all available dates for the 2019 season have been posted for private investigations, and no other dates will be added to the list. So if you would like to experience in a private setting some of the hauntings at the jail that we experience on a daily basis, go to 187pi.com and look at the available dates and book your private session today. This Saturday, I, along with some of our team, will be investigating a few local legends and hauntings where we will be filming them, either trying to debunk them or research our findings. Either way, these are going to be interesting and a lot of fun, and we will be posting our video findings on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel, so you'll want to watch for those. June 15th, we'll be having Mystical Reading Night here at the old Paulding Jail. Doors open at 5 p.m. If you have any areas of concern in your life, you will want to consult one of our certified readers for some insights. Crystal ball, tarot, and palm readings will be offered on this night. For more info, go to 187pi.com or look us up on Facebook and get registered. Some of the appointment slots have already been booked. And what we have going on at our network, WBHMDB, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern, we have Fate Magazine Radio with host Kat Hobson. Monday nights at 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern, we have Paranormal Pride Show with host Denise Pridemore. Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern, we have Paranormal Experience with host Kat Hobson. They are some fantastic shows with great information and amazing guests. You will want to be sure to tune in and stay tuned, folks. There's another fantastic show coming up after me as we come to the close of my show. I want to thank all of you, our listening friends out there tonight, for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen to my live broadcast. Thank you so much. I hope you all have a great evening and a fantastic weekend. Good night, everyone.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.